talk a little bit about Title 42. I'm getting a lot of questions about Title 42, a lot of messages, a lot of text messages, even from a lot of friends of mine. So just thought that I would go live and talk about it a little bit. So let me get this thing set up right. Here we go. So let me do something here. There we go. So anyways, just thought I'd come here. So how do you empower yourself? It's always a good question. I just thought it was kind of humorous a while ago that I received a tweet that says that someone was following the page. They came over to follow the page, and it said that a warning. Let's see what it read. Let me read it specifically. It said, wow, just followed on Facebook, and they sent a warning about your page giving false information. Thought you should know. Imagine the world we live in where a guy, right, who has clean records in military and civilian sectors is being defamed, hated, ridiculed, mocked by even some low-level veterans, and that's hard to say that. It's I hate to even use that term for it, but it's mainly veterans who don't want to read. Same with people, don't want to read. All right, who is simply telling you by laws and orders. I have given every link. I'm the only person, and it sounds bad because it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm the only person in the quote-unquote podcast world who are showing everybody all of the tools via .gov and .military sites that form a chronological order, a blueprint as I call it, of this operation via a COG and also military occupancy. It is all on .gov and .military sites. Now, we the people govern the land. Supposed to. Now, the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years and plus, atrocity. But .gov, .mil sites. Anybody who thinks laws and orders, military laws and federal laws, are conspiracy theories, you're the reason why America looks the way it does. And when we have 75%, even if it was 50%, even if it was 30% of Americans who cannot name the three branches of government, that's already bad enough. So we have so many groups out there that create chaos and division and confusion and misinformation and disinformation. On our levels, ladies and gentlemen, on mine and your level, I'm the average everyday American too. On our levels, podcasters don't need to be given misinformation or disinformation. This is all public information. Everything I've given you is all public information. I mean, it really blows my mind that many people are still out there trying to create division, chaos, hatred, negativity, confusion, all of it. When there are actual visuals that show you this is absolutely 110% correctly taking place. It is taking place. And to see that, it doesn't personally bother me. I don't lose sleep over it. I sleep like a baby at night. It stinks that people hate me when all I did was go live on a video in August. It went viral, went globally viral. And if you go back and watch that video, I was actually more frustrated that people will desecrate a grave, right? That the uniform is sacred, right? People pay ultimate sacrifice in a uniform, and that we have that many people. We have a lot of Americans who hate veterans, who hate military. We have socialists here, communists here, fascists here, Marxists here. We have all kinds of people. They love our milk and honey, right? They want to benefit from it, but I won't use the term that's used in a certain song out there. They preach about another way of living, but they want our milk and honey. They just want it their way, right? And it's just not like that. Our foundation shows otherwise, and our foundation actually supports more kinds of people if people would understand that the only way you can be free and live the way you want to live is to have a strong border and people who think like I do. I've never threatened anybody's lifestyle. That's why I tell Christians all the time, different people, look, let's worry about all this other stuff later. Let's take the bull by the horns and let's address what's going on right now with what's taking place via laws and orders. And where did America derail? How did we get this far off track? How did we get to a place where a United States veteran is being hated, ridiculed, mocked, slandered, defamed, with a clean record, who is simply telling you the laws and the orders that are current and active in place? How did we reach the depth of that atrocity, right? So that's what we're going to address. So I've been getting a lot of questions about Title 42. I just thought it was humorous that I received that tweet before. And how do you empower yourself? Well, if you're Reed from Texas, who emailed me this week, so shout out Reed, who doesn't like to read. Well, if you truly care about your government, you truly want to empower yourself, you truly want to be involved, then you must understand what's taking place. And if you don't like to read, because it is a lot of reading, if you didn't notice, I put a link up before this. It's saying, hey, I'm going live. Here's your tools. You see all those links? Yeah. That's just a tiny portion of it. That's just addressing the little topic we're talking about tonight. It's a lot to read. It really is. So if you're Reed from Texas and you don't like to read, then you got to look at videos of people who are one, no drama, no surface talk. Straight up showing you laws and orders. All right. All this drama and all this surface talk stuff, all these platforms out there, these podcasters and these tours that are out there. There's a lot of tours out there and they're surface talkers. All right. And you're paying big money to go VIP and to sit there. All right. A lot of people are making money through this quote unquote, they're calling it a movement. It's not a movement, ladies and gentlemen. I know President Trump uses that term a lot, but he's using it for other reasons. All right. There's a lot of people out there using that term and abusing that term. When you have someone who shows you all the links, laws and orders, current and active, not something that was revoked 20 years ago, 30 years ago. When you have that, you've got to understand that's how you discern the difference in what's propaganda, what is drama, what is surface talk. That's how you do it. There's not another podcaster out there, and it sounds like and maybe I am. I'm like Johnny Cash now. Well, maybe I am at this point. Because when you get beat up like I have, at some point when you get put in a corner, you got to defend yourself. And I'm going to defend myself. All I've done is shown the whole world in one video that went viral way back. And in the second video the next night. One video, I showed all the laws and orders that are in place that form a blueprint of what's going on. Now, I showed the military side first. There's a continuity government that's going on the other side. So I came at it at what I'm good at and what that, easy to lay out. But now, been laying out the continuity government side. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. A lot of stuff. How do you empower yourself? You feed yourself the things that matter. You empower yourself with the tools that matter, that govern your land. People govern their land, right? But we do have an infrastructure there. People created that infrastructure. We created it. You know what we can do? We can clean it up. We can clean it out. That's what's taking place right now. Now, the military, opted for a controlled operation because we're at the point now where people will argue over the slightest little thing and fight over the slightest little thing. I mean, you have football fans out there who will fight over their teams and kill each other over a football game. So just think where we'd be with the government, right? So they didn't want a civil war out there. It's like my friend Lewis Herms talks about all the time. Shout out to Lewis. I don't take anything from anybody. So shout out to Lewis. He has this cool example of a frog jumping in a pot of water. Well, the frog didn't realize the pot of water was on the stove, right? But the water is natural. So he jumps in this pot of water, right? Didn't realize it's on the stove, and then slowly, all these years, they've been turning, the deep state, right? The corporation, the rhinos, the dinos, the cabal, the swamp, they've been turning that heat up on that stove, right? And it starts boiling, and all of a sudden that frog's like, whoa, 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 Well, there's a counter psyop going on. The military's in control now, and they got control of the pot in 2016, and now they're doing what? They're turning that heat back down. And all of you people out there are slowly waking up. Some of you have been fully awake. Kudos to you, and thank you for being here. But for the ones that aren't there, you have to risk yourself. You have to risk your reputation. You have to risk being called crazy and all the other things that we're being called out there. And this is for the good of humanity. None of this hurts anybody. It actually cleans up our government and gets it back to the checks and balances that our founders actually talked about, that our founders actually, they fled from persecution. They didn't come here to create it again. So when you picture this, they're turning that pot down and people are coming around. Well, there's a lot of people who have no idea what's going on. No idea. Still to this day. Not a clue what's going on. And it's an atrocity. It really is, because there's nothing I'm doing that incites violence. There's nothing I'm doing that says go out in the streets and act like an idiot. It's empowering you with the laws and the orders. And anyway, you know, I put a post up earlier too that said I could, if I wanted publicity, I could roast some people right now. If I really wanted to just create a frenzy. But basically I was told earlier that nothing I'm showing people is empowering people to be active. Everything I'm showing you is empowering you to be active. You can't be active in your communities if you don't know the laws and the orders in place. So I'm going to send a fair warning out there to Mr. Hotshot. This is a big person, and a lot of you support him. A lot of you support these people. I'm sending you a fair warning. God put me here for a reason. It ain't for money. I have no subscriptions. I have shown everybody via .gov and .mil sites the laws and the orders that do empower them, that show them you got to read or watch videos, and however it applies to you, whether it be your friends, your family, your neighborhood, your community, your town, your city, your state, your county, wherever it is, county level, whatever it is. This will empower you to find your role, find your purpose, find your pillar, right? Wherever you may seem that is. None of this hurts anybody. When everybody learns what it is to be an American, to buy into the system we have, to empower people again, we the people that President Trump says we're going to give the power back to the people. Can't give it back to the people if the people don't know anything about laws and orders. And these certain tours out there, they're not doing that. They're actually telling the polar opposite. It's another form of control. It's another form of empowering themselves to be, making money, pocketing mega money. I wasn't put here for that. In all honesty, if it weren't for you, the people who have supported me and supported these platforms on all of my accounts, I could delete every account and ride off to the sunset like it never happened. I didn't come out for popularity, publicity, or any of that stuff. That's why I don't go to a lot of these events, because it ain't about the names. All right, some people are chosen by God. Daniel, the lion's head, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Paul. There's a lot of examples. David, little David. God appoints some people who will do what? Follow His will, accept His will and His plan in their life that He ordained. I did that. I turned my life around in November 2021. And ever since then, I have done everything He wanted me to do. And so, once again, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. He says, I will prepare a table in front of your enemies. They could be gnashing, hating, loathing, all these other things that's happening out there. You can walk right through them. Not bat an eye. Be prepared for them. That's what I'm trying to show all of you out there, is how do you take these laws and orders and apply them. But you got to know them first. You got to understand what's happening. So, there are two powers in the United States of America. As we know it right now, there are two powers. The federal government and the military. Real simple. Two powers. Alright? If you'll go to Federal Continuity Directive 1, if you've got your stuff pulled up, go to Federal Continuity Directive 1. What does it say on the front page? It says U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Federal Emergency Management Agency. Issue date, January 17, 2017. Very specific. All right. It tells you right there, Department of Homeland Security. And I'm going to show you how to tie all this in. We'll get to Title 42 in a minute. All right. This is all put in order for a reason. Okay. The issue date, January 17, 2017, 3 days before President Trump took office. All right, when you go in there, when you go in that FCD1, when you read it in there, it specifically tells you that it cancels out any directive before that. That's how you know that is your starting point for the COG, is FCD1. That's the outline. It talks about reconstitution and devolution. Now, Federal Continuity Directive 2. Go to it. It says U.S. Department of Homeland Security, once again, Federal Emergency Management Agency. It says issue date June 13, 2017. In there, it talks about how this is the implementation phase. All right, so FCD1 and FCD2 are outlines. They're your two up here, your two Federal Continuity Directives. One is the outline, two is the implementation phase. All right. When you go to federalregister.gov, I'll provide more of those links later. But federalregister.gov, when you look at the operational dates of FCD1, 2018 to 2022, the operational date of FCD2, the implementation, says 2020 to 2024. All right. So, look at February 2018. February 2018. Inside of it, it talks about the pandemic word for word, as if you've seen it, like as we saw it. If you take ourselves back to 2020, it specifically talks about stuff that was so specific to what we saw in 2020. How did they know to write that way back here in 2017 and 2018 if they didn't already know? This was not a plan, and I'm showing you. I'm trying to show you how to think a bigger picture and think how do you save 6.5 billion people versus maybe losing 200,000 versus the polar opposite. All right. And if you read in the introductory of 2018, the Continuity Guidance Circular, February 2018, it says Presidential Policy Directive. There's that Presidential Policy Directive. Now, pull up and look at the 2017 National Security Strategy. It specifically talks about the pandemic in it word for word, and it also talks about essential functions. Now, when you go back, got to bounce back and forth here. When you go back to FCD1 and you do control, if you do control F, which is control basically find, on your document page, when you go to these documents, hit control and the letter F, and it'll pull up a little drop bar, a search bar. Type in any word you want in that. When you type in NEF on Federal Continuity Directive 1, it says what? As established in the PPD-40, which is a Presidential Policy Directive. It specifically says it is a policy of the United States to maintain a comprehensive and effective continuity capability through continuity of operations, which is called a COOP, continuity of government, which is called a COG, and enduring constitutional government programs, ensuring the resilience and preservation of government structure under the United States Constitution and the continuous performance of what? National Essential Functions, NEFs. NEF is a hot word in all of these. It's called a National Essential Function. All right, very, very key. A PPD, Presidential Policy Directive, and an NEF, National Essential Function. Those are found in every one of these continuity directives. And it's also found in the 2017 National Security Strategy. It says right here, in the event of disaster, federal, state, and local agencies must perform essential functions and have plans in place to ensure the continuity of our constitutional form of government, which is outlined back over here in FCD1, FCD2, and all of them. It talks about that to the great extension. Now, go over to, click on January 2021. I made notes over here. That way we can go in a direct line. January 2021, It is actually titled the Executive Branch Reconstitution Concept of Operations. In it, it specifically talks about, once again, FEMA. It talks about General Services Administrations. It talks about the National Archives and Records Administration that President Trump talks about all the time, NARA. It talks about the Presidential Policy Directive. There it is again, the PPD. There's the NEFs, once again. It talks about the ERGs, Emergency Relocation Groups, and the Devolution Emergency Response Groups. It even talks about, down here in 2.3, section 2.3, what's it say right here? Executive Branch Reconstitution is a collective reconstitution of the EOP and executive departments and agencies working in collaboration with the EBR cell. If reconstitution is not possible in the Washington, D.C. area, Congress, in accordance with its enumerated powers, will work with the states to establish a new seat of government. Once the new seat of government is identified, the construction and or procurement of appropriate facilities to house executive departments and agencies begins. That specifically even talks about if D.C. is not usable anymore. Well, why did they put a fence around the Capitol? But why has D.C. been a ghost town since January 2021? Why did they build a new press room? Why did they build a new White House? Why did everything? It's right in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. Go to July 2021. FEMA. Once again, there it is. FEMA, Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security. FEMA. PPDs. NEFs. Ingrain that in your head. These were written way back here in 2017, 2018, 2020, 2021. Now, this is July 2021. So if President Trump is a former president, right, here's another COG, Guide to Continuity of Government for State, Local, Tribal, and Territorial Governments, July 2021. If the first one was issued January 17, 2017, the second, June 13, 2017, the other, February 2018, May 2020, January 2021, now July 2021, isn't that showing you a continuity in a different kind of way, all pun intended? And it specifically says in there it is again, principles of COOP, COG, and ECG. Wow. Branches of government, federal model. They have little diagrams in here to show you. Oh, there's that word again, Annex A, NEF 1 description, National Essential Functions. All right, and it's got little diagrams all over it. They make it really third grade fun. All right. Then, if Trump is former president, how come a few weeks ago, April 2023, here's another one reissued. Looky here, Reconstitution Manager's Guide, FEMA Office of National Continuity Programs, April 2023. Ooh, let's take a dive into that. Let's read about this. And what does it say in here? Let me find a key paragraph here. It specifically says, let's see, 1, 3, 9. Consistent with Executive Order 13961 and the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. Executive Order 13961. I believe that was December the 7th, 2020. Donald John Trump. And here we are with these federal continuity directives clear as a bell, FEMA.gov/sites/default/files/documents/FEMA Reconstitution Manager's Guide.pdf, April 2023. Consistency. The very first one was GPO.gov, which is a government publishing office, and the other 6 have been FEMA.gov. Specifically says Department of Homeland Security, and specifically says FEMA. And here we are, April 2023, with it saying on page 12, consistent with Executive Order 13961, which is Donald John Trump's executive order called the Federal Mission Resilience Act, which this says also the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. If Trump is a former president, why is a continuity of government issued here in April 2023? How come Biden hasn't done anything, ladies and gentlemen? Because a COG. What is a continuity government? That's also where you got to pull up your definition of a COG. Let's go over here and look at what a definition of a COG is. Look what it says. Continuity programs, background. In accordance with PPD-40, National Continuity Policy, the Department shall develop and implement comprehensive COOP plans, continuity of operations, including devolution and reconstitution in order to increase survivability and ensure continuous performance and delivery of PMEFs, MEFs, and essential supporting activities that support the national essential functions under all circumstances. All right. Continuity of operations. Here's a definition of a continuity of operation. The Office of Security this is their definition. All right. This is under commerce.gov. Another .gov site. Ooh, all this false stuff I'm giving you people. The Office of Security Continuity Programs staff manages the departmental continuity programs consisting of the Continuity of Government, COG, and the Continuity of Operations, COOP, programs. These programs are managed in accordance with the Presidential Policy Directive. There's that word. There it is again. And the appropriate federal continuity directives. Through tests, training, and exercises, the staff effectively plans for, controls, and evaluates all interagency level exercises for these programs in accordance with the National Exercise Program. I mean, it's all right there. It's all right there. So you pull up the other one I sent to you, what should be the second link. It's on page 14 that talks about the background. And then it talks about essential functions or critical activities that directly perform or support, there's those letters, PMEF, MEF, ESA, and must be sustained during all phases of a continuity event. There's the NEFs again. Ladies and gentlemen, it's all laid out. There it is. Letter B on page 15 now. Move to page 15. Federal continuity documents. All department COOP plans will comply with PPD-40, FCD-1, FCD-2, FMRs, Executive Order 13961, and this order. The exception is when a COOP plan is included as a part of higher level COOP plan which meets these. This is directives.doe.gov. And it specifically tells you right there in letter B on page 15 that all department COOP plans will comply with Presidential Policy Directive-40, Federal Continuity Directive 1, Federal Continuity Directive 2, and the other FMRs, which are all these other issues. Executive Order 13961. I really could end this video right here and it would be done. This was approved December 21st, 2021. If Donald John Trump is a former president, why are all these being approved after January 2021? How and why? And nobody's bothered to explain how the Army got it wrong that day. Of all the presidential inaugurations, of all the presidential funerals, how did the Army give Donald John Trump 4 cannons, which is a presidential inauguration, and Joe Biden on January 20th, 2021 had 3 cannons, which is a presidential funeral? Nobody wants to explain that. Explain how I'm wrong. It ain't about being right or wrong. It's not about, I'm not getting rich off this. Didn't do this for the money. So how am I being attacked, slandered, mocked, ridiculed, laughed at, death threats, you name it? How and why? How are people riding by my house looking for my house. How? .gov.mil sites. Everything shows you that the federal government is under a continuity of government. Under .gov. And they're being issued. That was April 2023. April 2023, and it's saying inconsistency with Executive Order 13961. And all these others talk about Executive Order 13961 from January 17th, 3 days before he took office, all the way up to the last one issued April 2023. They're all consistent. Well, there's bound to be another come out because why? FCD2 says what? Operational date out to 2024. So it shows we're still under a continuity government. When the federal government is under a COG, that means Congress knows what's going on, because that's what? Legislative branch. Here's these branches that Americans can't even name, but they want to argue with me. They want to argue, debate, slander, hate, mock, ridicule, etc. But they can't even name the three branches of government, which are clearly under a COG. So Congress knows what's going on. People act right all the time. How's Congress? Do they know? And none of that. Yes, they know. Read these directives. And I'm not trying to be upset. I'm just saying, like, look, ladies and gentlemen, this stuff don't change. No, I don't have new information except for when it comes out, because it doesn't change until new information does come out. That's how laws work. That's how orders work. Laws are either revised or revoked. Orders are either rescinded or mission accomplished. It's really that simple. All right, so how and what? So, all right. So how am I receiving all this stuff, right? So you got to empower yourself. You have to empower yourself. All right, so let's move on. I won't get on my high horse with that. I'll divert here, and we'll go back over here, because once again, it shows Congress. Yes, they know what's going on. Courts, judicial branch, courts know what's going on. That's why a certain case out there, not even going to name it, certain case out there, they keep submitting it to the Supreme Court. And it says what? Optional, add $1. And every time they post something, it says money making scheme. The courts are under a continuity of government. That means the Supreme Court is under a continuity of government. Courts, Congress, and executive branch. So the president and the vice president and the cabinet. Biden is what they call a COG. Biden is a Commonwealth Actor. A Commonwealth Act number 671. It's all World War II history being repeated. We'll get to that in a minute, even though you've probably already heard this, most people watching. But Congress, courts, and executive branch. So legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch are all under a COG. They all know what's going on. And why there hasn't been any leaks is because, well, there's all kinds of rules around that. There's also NDAs. There's also, hey, if you peep your mouth, here's your consequences. Here's your punishments, right? So they're very well skilled at this. They know what's going on. All right. So when you finally let that sink in, what is a COG? What is a continuity of government? When you let that sink in, then you should never ask a question again. Does Congress know? Do the courts know? Yes. That's why that case that has no standing, because they already know what was taking place by these laws and orders, because they're what? They're lawmakers. They're legislators for a reason. If you know the three branches of government, executive branch, judicial, legislative, if you know what they do, then you would understand that. Who writes the laws? Right? Legislative branch writes the laws. Executive branch passes the laws. The judicial branch interprets the laws. Yes, they know what's going on. 100%. All right, so now that you have the COG, right, let's address national emergencies. National emergencies. I've heard people out there say, oh, presidents passed national emergencies one down to the other. They were not supposed to. They are called a national emergency for a reason. It wasn't supposed to be a national emergency drug out 20 years, drug out 30 years. And how come President Trump terminated a national emergency and others didn't? Okay, you're watching the dismantling of the federal corporation. You're watching the dismantling of the deep state, the obliteration of the deep state. He says it all the time. He tells you all the time. We're obliterating the deep state. The swamp, the rhinos, the dinos, all of them, the cabal, right? That's what that is. All right, so national emergencies were not supposed to be passed. They were supposed to be used only during a time of emergency by the president and then addressed by Congress and addressed by the president. Terminated. Not drug out for years and years and years. As President Trump alludes to, we're going to do what? End lobbyists, and we're going to end defense contracts because all they do is make excuses to keep us in war. I quote Donald Trump. All right. National emergencies were not supposed to be passed one down to the other. Abuse of power. That was all money-based. They're dismantling that. So when you realize that we're under a cog, then you go back and you look at my blueprint I talk about. The Law War Manual was reissued June 12, 2015. 4 days before Donald John Trump rolls down that escalator to announce his candidacy for president. All right, then the Military Justice Act was written in 2016. Now, this is very key. The Military Justice Act will prove the cog all day long. Because why? Go look at the Military Justice Act now. We'll look at the Law War Manual in a minute, but look up on that link over there. It says on the very first page, Congressional Research Service, August 28, 2020. All right, but when you look down under it, it's called Military Justice Act of 2016. It specifically tells you that it was not passed until the 2017 National Defense Authorization Act, which is the defense budget. Okay, so that's very key. So here, let's tie this in. Now that you know what a COG is, now that you know that the very first Federal Continuity Directive was issued January 17, 2017, now let's look back at the dates of this Law War Manual and why this is important, and the Military Justice Act, so we'll parallel those. All right, the Military Justice Act, written 2016, but wasn't passed until the 2017, once again, National Defense Authorization Act, which clearly shows a continuity government in a different way. And here's how and why. The Military Justice Act was signed by, it was written by the United States Supreme Court. Go read this. Check this bad boy out. The Supreme Court has called military justice a system of justice separate from jurisprudence in civilians' court. Members of the armed forces are subject to rules, orders, proceedings, and consequences different from the rights and obligations of their civilian counterparts. Wow. Accordingly, it might be said that discipline is as important as liberty interests in the military justice system. Wow. Read this. The Constitution specifically exempts military members accused of a crime from the Fifth Amendment right to a grand jury indictment, from which the Supreme Court has inferred there is no right to a civil jury and courts martial. Wow. You know how big that is? That's epic. It specifically says, it tells you straight up front, military laws are separate from civilian laws, from civil laws. All right? It tells you straight out the gate. There's another thing in here I'm going to find really quick. Got to find it. Let's see here. There we go. This is very key. All right, so, but do your timeline real quick. The Military Justice Act is the Supreme Court clarifying in 2016. So they wrote this in 2016. But it didn't pass until 2017. Why is that so important? SCOTUS, Supreme Court. Continuity of government shows that all courts and all Congress are under a continuity of government. But the Military Justice Act wrote this in 2016. It didn't pass until 2017. Very, very key. It shows you this was very important, that the military occupancy, once again, there's two powers in the United States, federal government, which are under a continuity of government. That leaves one power, the military, which is why the Law War Manual is so important. When the federal government is under a continuity of government, that means that we are under a military occupancy as defined in the Law War Manual and the Military Justice Act. The Supreme Court shows you that is precedent that they wrote this in 2016 before they went under a continuity government. That is epic. And then when you look at the laws put into place by Donald John Trump in March 2020, everything was done by laws and orders. Everything on all levels, because they had to dismantle all levels. They had to root out all the corruption at all levels. They had to find all the dirty rats at all levels. They had to expose all these dirty rats at all levels. That's why he lost certain court cases, because those dirty rats were what? Appointed by whom? Clinton, Bush, and Obama, okay? That's why they had to go through all these processes of law. That's why he's being indicted in certain courts right now, because they're exposing all these rats at all different levels. This is a full clean out. And you, the people, need to be patient out there, because the military is going to get this right. They're doing this right. That way there's no loopholes. There ain't no saying, well, we should have done this, we should have done that. This was a wait for the opportune moment for the military to step in, the military generals all over. All right, this is a world operation, a world cleanout. It's happening in Brazil, and there's optics all over the world showing you. P-8 Poseidon's flying everywhere. There's all kinds of things that show, that outline what are all in laws and orders. And this is a world operation. Okay, so you, the people, need to be patient out there. And all of you out there saying you can't see it, it's because you ain't reading and you're not paying attention to the things that matter. You're still following the black box. You're still following propaganda. You're still following drama. You're still following podcasters who give you all kinds of different people, and they're not showing you the laws and orders that are currently and actively in place. So if you want to follow that, you're going to keep looking like that, and you're going to keep being frustrated, and you're going to keep being all distraught. You're going to be upset. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry, confused, because you're following the wrong people. You're following people who have what? Agendas, and they want to put something, pad their pocket. Instead of trusting God to put the money on the table, they're doing what? They're creating it on their own. So if you want to follow that, you're on the wrong page. On all my platforms, you're on the wrong page. I started with 2 followers, ladies and gentlemen. Two in government. 2 followers. I've got the screenshot of my actual page over on Telegram, where I actually have 1 follower. You know who the one was? My friend that I went and made the video for that went globally viral. So shout out Jonhson. That was the only person following me on Telegram. I started with 1, it bumped up to 2, and it was 2 for months there. So you're on the wrong page if you're following me for any kind. It's laws and orders. That's what's wrong with this nation. That's what's wrong with it. It's because people have personal agendas. All right? I have nothing to gain here except for great people, and God to take care of me when it comes to eating and everything else that's happening. You have to read. And if you're like Reed who don't like to read, you got to watch videos, but you still have to print this stuff out and be willing to look at it and see that it does say it on the paper from a .gov and a .mil site. You have to be willing to read that. You have to look at that, because that's exactly what's going on. All right, that's why I post all these pictures, these aircraft all the time. The aircraft show you. When people say you can't see it, open your eyes. You can't see the forest for the trees because you can't even define what the trees are. You can't define what the forest is. Okay? These laws and orders define the trees and the forest for you. And once you learn those, like the back of your eyelids, that's why I can look at anything and find all the optics and the comms from it. That's how I can hear a speech from President Trump and go, well, that backs this up. And this does this here. And this right here is a code. And that's a military optic. And that's a military code. And this is a military secret. And it's not secretive. It's all public information. Public information is public knowledge for you to attain and to apply. All right? So, COG and military occupancy. President Trump did everything by the letter of the law. No matter what people say, even when he gets ridiculed, slandered, defamed, laughed at, mocked, all these god-awful pictures out there of him that people take, they do the same thing to me. They put you, they photograph, Photoshop it and do all these god-awful things to people. It's the devil. It's evil. And they don't like it. They're being exposed. They're being exposed to the world. And don't worry, when people say God wins, that's how you apply that term, God wins. There's a lot of people out there saying that, but they don't understand that truly what that means. God wins from stuff like that because God is not going to stand for it. Salt water, fresh water can't come from the same spring. There's a lot of people out there talking about being a Christian and talking about being godly and talking about all these other things right here. It ain't right here. It ain't right here. They're not reading. They're not reading what the Word says. They ain't reading nothing in there what that Word says, because everything that they actually profess is polar opposite of what that Word actually says. All right, that Word is actually pretty strong when you get in there that shows what God actually does and what He does to the enemies. I don't think they really want to know, probably more than likely. So, didn't get on here to preach. But you have to be willing to read. You have to be willing to see that. COG and a military occupancy. When the federal government is under a COG, we're under a military occupancy. And it's all outlined in these. Now let's go back and look at this right here, because the March 2020, President Trump gave a direct military order. That separated him from being president. All right, and the Military Justice Act shows it to you. All right, Article 2 of the Constitution makes the president commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy. And Roosevelt used that same thing. He said this, and this is why President Trump made all kinds of World War II quotes. Even in March 20, he said, different war, same scenario. Different war meaning an invisible regime, and same scenario, same laws and orders from World War II. The same thing with the Commonwealth Act 671, which is where the United States of America and Roosevelt during World War II put a puppet into place for the Philippines president, where that person addressed the media and the press while the actual president was being flown by the U.S. back and forth to the Philippines, all right, to the U.S. They were protecting the actual president, and there was a puppet in place meeting the media, answering questions by the media. It's a World War II history repeat. That's why President Trump says all the time, if they're going to investigate me, they got to investigate every president before me immediately, because he's using 90 to 95% of laws and orders that he didn't write or pass. They're all been passed by former presidents and former Congress. Okay, it's all there. March 2020, he did 2 verbal national emergencies. 2 verbal. He had already declared multiple national emergencies before then, and every single one of these national emergencies have been extended under Biden, which is a COG. Why? Because Biden ain't even real. When you understand the COG and you understand the military occupancy, which are all on .gov sites, and they're still releasing them. Once again, the April 2023 shows a continuity of government in a different way. All pun intended. They're showing you. All right, so when you understand that, and you understand that Biden is a COG, okay, March 2020, there were 2 verbal national emergencies. This is going to address Title 42. We're getting there, okay? We're moving into that, all right? You got to understand, though, President Trump became commander-in-chief, a different role, a different title, a different obligation by law. The Military Justice Act already showed you military laws are separate from civil laws, all right? So let's look at the Military Justice Act and show you what it specifically says. The Constitution, to provide for common defense, gives Congress the power to raise, support, and regulate the armed forces, but makes the President Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces. Article 3, which governs the federal judiciary, does not give it any explicit role in the military. And the Supreme Court has taken the view that Congress's power, quote, to make rules for the government and regulation of the land and naval forces, end quote, is entirely separate from Article 3. Now, what did it say about Article 3 again? The Constitution, to provide for common defense, gives Congress the power to raise, support, and regulate, but makes the President Commander-in-Chief of the armed forces. All right. And it says Article 3, which governs the federal judiciary, does not give it any explicit role in the military. It tells you right there, ladies and gentlemen. In the Military Justice Act, not only does it clarify that military law is separate from civil law, it also clarifies that the President and Commander-in-Chief roles are different. They're separate, which is what Article 2 says, and that's what Roosevelt told Congress now. Roosevelt told Congress in 1941, And guess what Congress did in 1941? Congress gave Roosevelt the power, as president, to restructure the executive branch, president, vice president, cabinet. He gave him the power to restructure the executive branch for a president to declare war via national emergencies. All right? So when you go look at the First War Powers Act and Second War Powers Act, the First War Powers Act is 50 United States Code. All right? That's what it transferred over to. That act is 50 U.S. Code. That 50 U.S. Code is titled War and National Defense. Not international defense, war and national defense. What did we say earlier in these federal continuity directives? National essential functions. 50 U.S. Code is war and national defense. All right. Under 50 United States Code, Chapter 33, Section 1541, it specifically says when the president cannot enforce the law, by a national emergency, he can declare war. Go back to the Military Justice Act, which clarifies military law is separate from civil, and it clarifies president is separate from commander-in-chief, and that Congress and the Supreme Court, it specifically says right here, Congress has taken the view. That means they support this. All right? Because they support that, it shows that March 13th was one verbal order, but March 27th is where President Donald John Trump became commander-in-chief when he gave a direct military order that federalized 1 million National Guard to active duty. All right? That order was extended. It's been extended out. Biden has no authority over that by military law and federal law, because it was a direct military order, and you got Congress and the Supreme Court here clarifying in an act that is still active, clarifying that, which we didn't need that, but thank you that they did it. All right. And he also put it in Executive Order 13912, which is a federal order. Okay, so not only is it a military order, but it's also a federal order. And Biden extended that. Biden is a cog. Biden is not even real, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, but he's not. He's a Commonwealth Act 671, which is also found under a .gov site, under gazette.gov. I'll provide that. I've already provided that multiple times, but I'll provide it again where you can read about that. Okay, so you got to tie all this in together. Hang with me, because we're getting to Title 42. You have to understand those first. That was a direct military order. He still holds that command. He's alive. He's breathing. He still holds that command. It doesn't matter what he's saying. It doesn't matter what he's doing out there. That is all part of the operation. It's a sting operation, a covert operation. It's a counter psyop. Okay, it's counter psyop, meaning it's a reversal on the federal government. Okay, they're dismantling the federal corporation. There's multiple stuff that's already showing you that with the quantum financial system, all the talks about the banks, all this stuff is showing you we're going to a different system, a gold-backed digital currency, which is why it's important that I posted the other day, the state of Texas is going to be the first state, September the 1st, 2023, to go to a gold-backed digital currency. It's all coming, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing you do to stop it. It's not going to hurt you. Nothing to panic over. Nothing to be scared over. It's all exciting. You're living through world history. You're watching a biblical, historical world operation. All right, so military, President Trump, he still holds that command. Military Justice Act clearly specifies that. Now, why does that matter with Title 42? Because you got to keep in mind, once again, Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, the National Essential Functions, the PPD, remember those terms again. Keep those terms in mind. All right. And then also understand what a cog is. All right. Who has power under the cog? That's why it's important to read the very first pages of those FCD1s and FCD2s, all the ones that were under those. All right. All these managements and all these guides. What does it say on the first page of all of them? Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. That's why it's very important. All right. So let's go over here to Title 42. let's read about Title 42. All right, so you got to go to pull up on your link there, and you got to scroll down to section 265. You got to understand what Title 42 is, but you need to read the actual definition first. All right, it's under Title 42, Chapter 6A, Subchapter 2, Part G, and go down to section 265. Specifically says suspension of entries and imports from designated places to prevent spread of communicable diseases. Whenever the Surgeon General determines that by reason of the existence of any communicable disease in a foreign country, there is serious danger of the introduction of such disease into the United States, and that this danger is so increased by the introduction of persons or property from such country that suspension of the right to introduce such persons and property is required in the interest of public health, the Surgeon General, in accordance with regulations approved by the President, shall have the power to prohibit in whole or in part the introduction of persons and property from such countries or places he shall designate in order to avert such danger and for such period of time as he may deem necessary for such purpose. All right, now let's go over here to read this. Title 42 expulsion. Title 42 expulsions are removals by the U.S. government of persons who have been recently in a country where communicable disease was present. All right. During the COVID pandemic, the Trump administration used this provision to generally block land entry for many migrants. All right. The reason why this is important to understand is you got to understand this right here. When you go over, guess what the Office of the Surgeon General is under? The Department of Health and Human Services. All right. Which it specifically says, let's see, where did it go here? When you look at, I don't know why all these are reloading, but you go back over here, it specifically says that a judge, watch this, a judge, on November 15th, 2022, senior judge of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia, Emmett G. Sullivan, ruled that expulsions under Title 42 were a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Let's go look at the Administrative Procedure Act. Look at there. What's that say? Passed? It says right here. Enacted June 11, 1946 is a United States federal statute that governs the way in which administrative agencies of the federal government of the United States may propose and establish regulations, and it grants U.S. federal courts oversight over all agency actions. All right. Now, what's that actually mean? Well, if we're under a federal continuity directive, which outlines a continuity of government, it means the federal government is not in control. It's plain and clear. All these are optics. One, to either wake up these sleepy, normie Americans to actually give a dang about your country again, because Title 42 is specifically for a pandemic type situation, which it outlines that. It's called Title 42 expulsions, and it talks about, it specifically says about, let's see, let's go back here to 265. Suspension of entries and imports from designated places to prevent spread of communicable diseases. So it has nothing to do, not a thing to do, with immigrants and border and things of that nature. This is why you got to read, all right? So if you understand the COG and you go understand, if you go read these federal continuity directives, then you read that 2017 National Security Strategy, it 2 and 3 years before the pandemic, it outlines a pandemic word for word. And what you'll see during it talks about catastrophic events. It even outlines things. It don't say the words, but it does talk about chemical explosions. It don't say train derailments, but it talks about these kind of things over here in these directives. 2 and 3 years before you see them. All right? So this Title 42 thing, people talking about, oh, people are flooding over the border. If you believe Donald Trump, all right, there's people who hate him, who don't like him, all right, at least they have an argument from the standpoint they just don't like it. They don't like what's going on. But if you're a Trump supporter, like myself, and if you love the man, then if you like the man, you got to trust the plan. All right. Well, he told you there was only like 196 miles of border that was yet to be finished. So how are 15 million people coming through a little portion of 196 miles? All right, when I have clear evidence of aircraft down there on the border all the time, we have Border Patrol. We know that. You hear Border Patrol talking, they tell you. Okay, so if he only had 196 miles, how are 15 million people? There ain't 15 million people going through the border. This isn't about the boots on the ground. And for anybody out there who makes you feel belittled or stupid, if you're where I'm at already and you understand what's going on, they clearly don't understand one thing, all right, is this. There's always going to be people trying to get through the border, even through an actual checkpoint and access location where they're actually being checked. There's always going to be someone trying to sneak something through the border, sneak illegal stuff. That's never going to change, all right, unless you just absolutely have no checkpoints and no access points, and you say absolutely nobody can come through here, and you board up and you put a wall in those check places. So there's a huge difference in that kind of entry versus what they're actually trying to get Americans to understand. This is a policy issue. This is a policy, because what Democrats traditionally, even though this is an operation on both sides of the aisle, but what traditional Democrats do is they want people in this nation who don't have an identity. They don't want them to have voter ID. They don't want them to be registered. They don't want any of that. They just want to bring all these people in here and then rush them in to vote where they can stay in power. Okay, that's how they cheat on the elections. That's one way they cheat. Real simple. And for people who don't understand this is a policy thing, this is to wake every American up. This whole thing is to scare you, to make you do what? I don't like the scare tactic, which is why I'm trying to show you by laws and orders how to empower yourself to read what's going on versus these people out there accusing me who are on bigger platforms saying that I'm not empowering you, that these are conspiracies. These are laws and orders showing you. When you read the laws and orders and know them, then you're empowered to go out to take action. So all these surface talkers out there, this is what's wrong with America. And this is why they're spewing rhetoric out there. This is why they're trying to do a different form of control to stay in their power because of money. Money, 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 money. The lust of money. All right, so you got to be careful who you're following out there. These will empower you. When you understand, Title 42 is about expulsion. This is about communicable disease. This is not about policy of all illegal immigrants. Total different subject. All right. Now let's go over here. Let me show you something else. All right. So I got an email last week or a week ago, a week or two ago, somewhere in there. And it was saying that, oh, he's ending you talk about the executive order that Donald Trump put into place in March 2020. He's ending it. Ladies and gentlemen, Biden said this is the actor, right? The Commonwealth actor, a cog. Anybody who uses Biden in present tense, it's a desecration of uniform. Just like my very first video said. If military law and military regulations don't mean anything, then why are we even here? All right, there's hundreds and thousands of memorial graves all over this land who, when they raised their right hand, the same as I raised my right hand, my dad, my uncle, my grandpa, my great-grandfather, when they raised their right hand, we swore in under the same Title 10. The same Title 10 that specifically says the only person who can federalize the National Guard active duty is the President of the United States of America. How come the National Guard moved into D.C. a week before? Almost 2 weeks. Well, actually it was 2 weeks before. 2 weeks before January 20, 2021. Who gave that order? The only person who can give that order was Donald John Trump. But guess where he actually gave the order? March 2020, when he federalized 1 million National Guard to active duty. He's the only person who has federalized National Guard to active duty. And that order is good till March 2024. Biden ain't done nothing. And if you're using Biden in present tense, it's a desecration to everybody in uniform. And I don't care what veterans don't know what's going on. Veterans will learn. I suggest to all the veterans out there, if you don't know what's going on and you're telling your family and friends this ain't happening, you're going to look even more foolish when all this is revealed. It's already being revealed. All you got to do is go over to the Federal Continuity Directives and see that they've been issued since January 2017 all the way up to April 2023 and consistency with Donald John Trump's orders. All right? The Military Justice Act should definitely quiet any veteran who's saying that out there. It's showing their motives. It's showing why they actually served. So I would suggest to all the veterans out there, you probably want to keep your little mouth shut and act like that you know something that you ain't supposed to talk about, and go do some reading and understand that these are the same laws that you served under. And you might want to understand that, because what it's going to do is make you look even more foolish when this is revealed. And it might even tarnish your reputation from people who looked up to you. So I highly suggest you probably want to pipe it down a little bit. Just going to throw that out there. Because once again, if you use Biden in present tense, then what you're saying is that what I witnessed on January 2021, when Donald John Trump had 4 cannons, which was the actual official presidential salute battery, known as the Old Guard, the 3rd Infantry Division, who was with Donald Trump, with 4 cannons. And then the other, what was shown to you, all kinds of jacked up service members, all kinds of jacked up uniforms, all kinds of jacked up everything. We won't use the other terms that they use that we use in the military, because I can't say that word. All right, won't say that word. All right, all kinds of jacked up. All right. Biden raises his right hand 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a violation of the 20th Amendment of the Constitution, which specifically says the president's term shall end at noon and the successor shall then begin. That little word "then" is very, 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 very key. Shall then begin. President's term shall end at noon. Successor shall then begin. All right. Violated. Right by the wreath, the grave of the unknown soldier. Sacred, sacred ground. There's a soldier without a cover on. Huge no-no. Where are you, veterans? You don't even have to see the big holy grail over here. But 3 cannons? And you go over to usstate.gov, which talks about military funerals, and it specifically shows you 3 cannons. And it even tells you it's not a 21-gun salute. It's a military funeral service. And you're still wanting to use Biden in present tense when all these federal continuity directives show you we're under a continuity government. And then when you know the federal government's not in control, well, that only leaves one power, which is why the Law War Manual was issued June 12, 2015. It was upgraded. All right, Trump rolls down 4 days later. The Military Justice Act, the Supreme Court clarifies before they go under a cog that military laws are separate from civil laws. And they clarify that the president is not commander-in-chief at the same time. It's all there. All right, so Biden, anybody using Biden in present tense, stop right now. Go back to the very beginning, get your notes, click on the links, and start reading the Federal Continuity Directives first. Then you need to study the Law War Manual, which you need to also find the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is going to take you 10 years to read it alone if you're not a speedy reader. I highly suggest you catch up, because when you go over here and read the memorandum that was put out by whom? U.S. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, on February the 10th, 2023. Read it. It specifically says, on January 11th, 2023, the Secretary of Health and Human Services extended the public health emergency for 90 days to April 11th, 2023. On January 30th, 2023, the President informed Congress that the national emergency and public health emergency declarations would be briefly extended and conclude simultaneously on May the 11th. Nowhere on that piece of paper does it say President Biden. It says the President informed. That is FEMA and Department of Homeland Security memorandum. All right, it was put out February the 10th, 2023. It doesn't say anywhere on this about Biden. This is FEMA. Who are on the federal continuity directives? Department of Homeland Security and FEMA. All right, that was February the 10th, 2023. When did Commonwealth Act number 671 after Biden say he was going to end the pandemic? He did that April, right here, April the 11th, which shows that the other was the end. That's where that date comes from. It says right here, Secretary of Health and Human Services extended the public health emergency for 90 days to April the 11th. It don't say Biden in this. This is FEMA and Department of Homeland Security, which is in consistency with the federal continuity directives, which the federal continuity directives are in consistency with what? Executive Order 13961, which is whom? Donald John Trump. Okay? Biden is a continuity of government. He's a Commonwealth Act 671 World War II history repeat, which all throughout this, it's nothing but World War II. World War II laws, same thing. Then, when you click on the Congressional Research Service, the other link I provided, the crsreports.congress.gov, you go down here, right, and it tells you, it says something about Biden down here. It says, additionally, May 11th is the same date that the emergency declarations under Section 319 of the Public Health Service Act and the National Emergencies Act will end, according to President Joseph R. Biden. Well, when you click on that, when you click on that little hyperlink that says President Joseph R. Biden, it sends you to another page. Executive Office of the President. It's a H.R. 382 bill to terminate the public health emergency declared with respect to COVID-19. And it says Representative Guthrie of Kentucky. And it also shows Representative Gosar of Arizona. All right. The reason why that's important is that it exposes Biden in a different way. All right, because Biden is when all this is revealed, it's going to show you that he is not real. This was all an act. It's going to outline all that. Okay, so they're doing what? They, the military, are exposing the federal government. They're exposing the federal corporation, though. The federal corporation is completely different than the United States of America and the constitutional government, the constitutional republic, which is why President Trump trolls them a lot, and you got to understand what optics are. When he uses the word democracy, we're not a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. We're a constitutional republic, okay? All these others use democracy all the time. Biden, Schumer, Pelosi, Schiff, all these people. Some of these have already disappeared. They ain't even shown you half of them. Where's Schiff been? Where all these people been? Okay? Nobody. It's showing you the dismantling of the federal corporation. The United States of America became a federal corporation, 28 U.S. Code 3002. All right, Stoutenberg versus Hennick, 1889, shows how D.C. uses licenses and things of that nature. You got to go read all this. Organic Act of 1871. We became a federal corporation that went back under the crown in 1871. We haven't been free like you think we have. So all of this is a joint operation. You have military occupancy. They've been cleaning out and battling trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, human trafficking, drug trafficking. It's all over. There's multiple stuff in my documents, and also there's multiple things all over the news about trafficking everywhere. You have to read that stuff. You have to understand that's Executive Order 13818 that President Trump, that was his first national emergency he declared, was Executive Order 13818, which was human rights abuse, which covers all of the trafficking. There's so much stuff that I could cover. It literally would take 8-hour video to just go through all of it, and then it would be so hard because it's little branches off. You'd have to do little branches and go, all right, pause here, and then scoot over here, then all right, drop down here, now come over here. There's so much stuff to it. But Title 42, this is all to expose the federal corporation and who they have ties to. You saw the judge that I read off there. That judge is showing who his allegiance is to. All these executive orders that President Trump put into place were to expose governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, judges, and lawyers. It's a massive clean out from the top to the bottom, exposing all the rats. That's why some of you out there, some of you haters and trolls, you look like rats yourself. You might want to be careful. Yeah, they might get you too. I know some of you that's going to be getting some rude awakenings because a lot of you out there don't realize you're actually making yourself look guilty. Makes you look like you're going to be one of those that wanted to take the place of one of these people. I'd be careful if I was some of y'all. I'd be a little hesitant before I popped off at the mouth out there. All right, so how do you tie some more into it? Look at the link I sent. The Abraham Accords. DHS expands Abraham Accords to cybersecurity. Look at there, release date, February 2nd, 2023. Look at that. Department of Homeland Security. There they are again. There's that DHS. That's all in these federal continuity directives, all over the front page. There they are, expanding Donald John Trump's Middle Eastern peace deal. Wow. And what was that aircraft just today, on May the 8th, that I showed this morning, Egypt? Two Egyptian aircrafts in the United States of America, which are part of the Abraham Accords. All right, and here it is right here. The DHS is expanding the Abraham Accords. Man, all the Donald John Trump stuff is still in play, and it's still being extended and expanded. And all of the national emergencies that Trump put into place, all national emergencies now, Biden has extended. Now, why would Biden extend some of these executive orders? Why? They don't. Look, on a normal situation, if you didn't know about the COG, you didn't know about any of that, Biden and Trump would be daylight and dark different policies. Biden's already proved that for 40 plus years. 30-something, what was it, 36, 38 years as senator, 8 as a VP. I mean, his whole life has been spent showing you the people how corrupt he is and all the stuff he supported. He's shown you. He's flip-flopped here and here and here and here, and he's done this, this, and this. I mean, he's shown you his whole life. So, I mean, really, really, really think about that. Really apply this, right? So, they're exposing the federal corporation. All right, and he's the perfect one for it because he's one of the ringleaders. He's one of the worst ones that's been there. All right, so they're going to expose all this stuff. Department of Homeland Security. It's right in front of you. Federal Continuity Directives, Department of Homeland Security. Now, let's go over here. I added this one just for fun. Let's go down here to, I get all the questions because we're talking about coronavirus here. And I get all these questions about President Trump. Why did he endorse the jab? Oh my gosh, he endorsed the jab. Well, because you people won't read. All right? It's just because you won't read. Sorry, Reed from Texas. This ain't no jab on you. All pun intended. But let's go down here. And it shows right here. Look at here. The president. Thank you, doctor. Great job, too. Really great job. Thank you, Steve. So the pharmaceutical company Sandoz has been working with us very closely. And as Alex mentioned a little bit, 30 million doses of hydroxychloroquine to the United States government has been given. 30 million doses of hydroxychloroquine. And Bayer has donated 1 million doses of chloroquine, which will soon be distributed to states and state health officials around the country. Teva Pharmaceuticals is also donating 6 million doses of hydroxychloroquine to U.S. hospitals. That's 6 million doses. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Right in front of you. In a press conference on March 30th, 2023, Donald John Trump told the whole world what vaccine. He had vaccine orders in 2019, right? Which if you go read these federal continuity directives, it talks about vaccines. It talks about the pandemic word for word as what you saw in 2020, way back here in 2017 and 2018. This was a test run, ladies and gentlemen. It's a test run because the aircraft that I show you, they've all been running under the letter E with a number, R with a number, G with a number. And if you go read those federal continuity directives, it talks about emergency relocation groups and emergency response groups, DERGs, Devolution Emergency Response Groups. All right, and it's going to lead up to what President Trump's been talking about. He's been saying what? We're going to decimate street crime by 75 to 85%. We're going to tear down some bad and ugly buildings. We're going to take the homeless off our streets and rehabilitate them in these FEMA camps, right? We're going to give them the treatment they deserve and the mental treatment, the mental therapy, or whatever they need, all right? It's also going to take the homeless veterans off the streets as well and get them. He's talking about retribution funds. We know we're going to a digital gold-backed currency. He's been talking about retribution funds of all kinds. That's why he eliminated student loan debt from the military veterans. I was one of those in August 2020. It's all been laid out in front of you. And right here, for all of you who think that President Trump endorsed the jab, what you got to understand, in 2019, he had these executive orders. He listed the CDC in those orders. 2020 rolls around. He had another executive order that came out for vaccines. Guess who was not in there? The CDC. The CDC, the NIH, and FDA are all being exposed because they're in private sectors. Okay, they are private companies. They're public traded, sure, but they went against the laws and the orders put into place for monetary reasons. For any of you who took those vaccines that are not addressed in this press conference by the president himself, March 30th, 2023, you have no excuses. He told you right there. We told you. I was watching. I was listening. I got ridiculed. I got mocked. I got laughed at. I got completely scorned by friends and family. And you did too. A lot of you out there. I know a lot of you because I see your emails. I see your comments. I see you did too. Stand firm. Stand tall. Don't say I told you so in the wrong ways. I know we want to, but we were right. It's been right there. We told them. We showed them. It's all right. It's TrumpWhiteHouse.archives.gov/briefings-statements/remarks President Trump members coronavirus task force press briefing. Right here. 30 million doses of hydroxychloroquine the United States government has been given. And Bayer has donated 1 million doses of chloroquine, which will soon be distributed to states and state health officials around the country. Teva Pharmaceuticals is also donating 6 million doses of hydroxychloroquine to U.S. hospitals. How? This is why it's important to understand who you're watching and who you're listening to. All right? When a United States military veteran who has no subscriptions shows you all of the links via .gov and .mil sites. Now, no, I wasn't around in 2020. Sorry, God didn't intend it for that reason. But now you know. It's all right here. It was all right in front of you. That's why it's important to understand how your country works. We the people govern it, but we the people establish that. Congress works for us. It ain't the other way around. And when people apply that Congress has been pulling the wool over everybody for all these years and people didn't stand up to it, that's why we got where we got. That's why it sounds foreign to hear someone talk about laws and orders from .gov and .mil sites, and to think that I get ridiculed for that and I'm going to lose sleep over it is the biggest laugh I've ever heard in my life. Because that's where a veteran flips over and goes, well, it sucks to suck. I mean, that's what this sergeant used to say all the time. It sucks to suck. I mean, it really does. Because it's kind of like, getting a book like To Kill a Mockingbird and me reading To Kill a Mockingbird that Harper Lee wrote, and you get mad at me for my narration of it. That's what's going on when people get mad at me for showing laws and orders. Oh, this is all BS. I can't believe he's spewing all that stuff. It's in a chronological order. It forms a blueprint. From 2017, the Federal Continuity Directive 1 specifically tells you that any directive before this one cancels it out. So that's your starting point. All right, and then the second one came out, then the third one, then the fourth one, then the fifth one, then the seventh. I mean, and then, 6, 7, 8. Here we are. The seventh one was just a few weeks ago, April 2023. All right, and then you go read the National Security Strategy, and it's consistent with the February 2018 one on the pandemic, word for word, and the NEFs, the essential functions. I mean, it's all right there. And then you got the Military Justice Act.
laying it in a pocket. Supreme Court showing you before they went into a continuity government, they made sure this was precedent to write this, and then it passed when they were under a continuity government. Right? It's all right in front of you. So this Title 42 thing, nothing to fear. You know why? Because if you trust the man, you trust the plan, right? And I'm talking about God first. Trust him first, right? His plan is being laid out via Donald John Trump and the military. Because if you believe in the military, then you got to believe in the military laws and orders that I am showing you. They're all on .gov and .mil sites. And when you have federal continuity directives showing you that we're clearly under a COG, a continuity government, continuity of operations, a COOP, all right, then there's two powers in the U.S., two. And when the federal government's under a COG, that means one power's left. Mississippi math. Sorry, Mississippians. I've had a few get mad at me for picking on Mississippi. I lived in Hattiesburg, Mississippi one time. I can say it. I also lived in Leakesville, Mississippi one time. I can say it. All right, twice in my life I've lived in Mississippi. I can pick on Mississippi. It's Mississippi math. Two powers. Federal government under a COG. Who's left? Military. Military occupancy. Go check out the Law of War Manual. It ain't going to be fun to read. It's pretty long. I'm not going to lie about that. So, when you go read ain't going to read likes videos. But when you people go read Executive Order 13961, that's in that last continuity directive management guide that came out just a few weeks ago. Let's read Executive Order 13961 and tie this all in. Governance and integration of federal mission resilience. By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the National Security Act of 1947, as amended, I hereby order the following. Section 1, policy. It is the policy of the United States to maintain comprehensive and effective continuity programs that ensure national security and preservation of government structure under what? The United States Constitution in alignment with what? Here it is. Drum roll. Presidential Policy Directive-40, PPD. Executive departments and agencies, including the Executive Office of the President, must maintain the capability and capacity to continuously perform what? National essential functions, as defined by PPD-40, regardless of threat or condition, and with the understanding that adequate warning may not be available. Agency heads must fully integrate preparedness programs, including continuity and risk management, into day-to-day operations to ensure the preservation of what? NEFs under all conditions. Section 2, Federal Mission Resilience Strategy. To achieve this policy in conjunction with this order, I am signing the Federal Mission Resilience Strategy, which should be implemented to increase the resilience of the executive branch. Implementing the strategy will reduce the current reliance on reactive relocation of personnel and enhance a proactive posture that minimizes disruption, distributes risk to the performance of NEFs, and maximizes the cost effectiveness of actions that ensure continuity of operations, continuity of government, and enduring constitutional government. And you can read the rest of it as provided under Executive Order 13961. So when you do the math, ladies and gentlemen, once again, to wrap this up, probably the quickest video I've done in a while. Two powers in the United States of America. Federal government, military. These FCDs, the first one issued January 17, 2017, 3 days before Donald John Trump took office. Before the beautiful day of January 20th, 2017, when two military officers were standing behind him with headbands, military intelligence, and judge advocate generals, showing you all the optics of what was about to come. The storm was about to get underway. All right, what storm, Mr. President? Wait, you'll see. A lot of you are learning military, those of us who serve for the right reasons, and there's a lot of us out there. It's unfortunate that some veterans want to be argumentative. They want to create confusion still. It's because they haven't read. They didn't know the very laws and orders they served under. But tip of the hat to them. I believe most veterans, when they're shown the evidence, they will come around because if they care about their service, they care about their reputation, they care about, you know, that DD 214, then they better start applying and upholding the laws of which they actually served under. These are same laws and orders. So when you look at this, big picture here, all right, and you take the federal continuity directives that January 17, 2017 and June 13th, those two are your outlines, all right, 3 days before President Trump took office and roughly 4.5 months after he took office. All pun intended, it's already showing you a continuity of those. Department of Homeland Security, FEMA. All right, then you had the February 2018, May 2020, January 2021, July 2021, and the April 2023. All right, and there's a few different ones in there in between those that just show other kind of, you know, functions and things of that nature. Those are your the biggies, as they call them, that outline a lot more. There is a toolkit that came with one of those. In May 2020, it's about 348 pages, and it shows just different terms and things of that nature. But those are your key ones. All right, so when you understand those, they're showing you the continuity of the government. So when the executive branch, president, legislative branch, Congress, judicial branch, courts are under a COG and a coup, that means military is in control, under the military occupancy, which is found in the Law of War Manual. All right, the Law of War Manual was reissued and rewritten June 12th, 2015. It was also updated in December 2016, right before President Trump took office. But when you go read that, it specifically tells you what it was designed for. Military and federal lawyers wrote, they took the Law of War Manuals from Germany, Australia, the British Kingdom, and Canada. They took the Nuremberg trials, the Hague Conventions, Geneva Conventions, and also the Libra Code of 1863, took all the strengths of those, combined those to strengthen the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. All right, so when you take that, all right, and apply that, all right, military occupancy means the generals, commander-in-chief, and the generals. President Trump also did something that's never been done before. April 2020, he gave his Secretary of Defense equal authority to authorize the federalization of reserve components, reservists, which are National Guard as well, okay? It also talks about using the regular armed forces for certain operations. You have to go read that. It's very specific for reserve components and also regular armed forces. All right, so that means Secretary of Defense would have equal authority as the president. All right, very, very key. All right, so when you apply all of those, and then you take the laws and orders put in place from March 2020, which was a direct military order, that means President Trump, via the Military Justice Act, as Congress and also the Supreme Court clarified, that President and Commander-in-Chief are two separate roles. That was a direct military order when he federalized 1 million National Guard active duty. All right? Direct. As long as he's breathing and walking, he holds that command. That's how the military works. All right? Then he federalized and then put it in a federal order as well, Executive Order 13912, which is 10 U.S. Code 1209. All right? He's the only person who can federalize National Guard active duty. That's why the National Guard, I show the pictures every single day. Every single day, the National Guard have been out of their state jurisdictions and the U.S. jurisdiction. Any veteran that says that that is natural and they're just training and things of that nature have no idea and have no clue about regulations of military. All right? Even if they flew on those, they have no idea about the military laws and military regulations. The president is the only person who can federalize National Guard active duty. Federalization of the National Guard. 10 U.S. Code 12304 and 10 U.S. Code 12406. Go read them. It's there. It tells you the only person who can do so. The only person who's federalized National Guard active duty, Donald John Trump, March 2020. And those National Guard have been out of their state jurisdictions and U.S. jurisdiction every single day. That's why I post them every single day, or that's why I'll do a date to this date. And that means every single day in between that. And that's just the ones I took. That's not me sitting there all day. I don't sit on the app all day, every day. That's not all of the aircraft that are out of their state jurisdiction. That's just the ones that I catch when I look at it 6, 7, 8 times a day. So I'm not catching all of them. There's a lot more, way more, that I just use it for this sake. One National Guard out of their state a day keeps Sleepy Joe away, because Sleepy Joe ain't real. All right? So it's just a quote. All right? I don't talk about it in present tense because he ain't. All right? I go by military laws. And January 20th, 2021, 3 cannons means that Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. received a full-grade military funeral service. I didn't write those laws. I didn't write those honors. I didn't write that. So these have been in place for many years. Okay? Many. So Title 42 is nothing to worry about. For those who see it, if you understand what a COG is, and you understand the military occupancy, and you understand what those National Guard out of the state every single day represent, the laws and orders put into place, you have nothing to worry about. If you don't understand any of that, you have nothing to worry about too, because it was all planned. The federal continuity directives, way back here, when President Trump says we've been in this war 7 years, that's what he's talking about. Now, when he talks in other ways, when he puts out these videos on True Social, and he's talking about 15 million coming across the border, he's talking about policies. At what point do you give a dang about policies? At what point do you understand these laws and orders, which are policies? Okay, the presidential, it's the PPD, right? The Presidential Policy Directive. Policy. There's a policy there. Okay? At what point do you understand that? At what point do you actually apply that? That is why it's very important to understand how you empower yourself. You empower yourself by reading, or if you're like Reed from Texas who don't like to read, then you got to listen to somebody who does not use drama, doesn't use surface talk, shows you straight up all the links of .gov and .mil sites. Because even showing you all the .gov and .mil sites, it's cumbersome. It's a lot of information. So just having all the laws and orders up front doesn't mean you're going to pick it up just that quick. So if you're trying to watch me one day, and you're watching all these other podcasters and all these different people at these events and these big events that are surface talking and using drama, you're not doing yourself any favors. You would do yourself a favor by taking these tools that have been given to you and printing them out, putting them in front of you, and watching these videos that I do, and pause it when you need to, highlight on that paper, write how you need to, whatever it is that jogs it in your brain, or whatever it is you're frustrated with, or you're scared about, or you're confused about, then write it as you see fit. Like, that's why I take notes all the time. I mean, I have notes in this over here. I keep notes in this. I mean, I take notes all the time. I mean, I can't open it up I guess maybe I can. But, I mean, there's pages of notes. I mean, it's all public information. If it's public information, it's public knowledge for you to attain and use your brain and apply it to your life and apply it to your goals and your ambitions, or whatever it may be, especially if you care about this stuff. If you don't, you're already wasting your time already. And trying to get in the comment box and look cool, just trying to get a comment in there just to look cool, and all these trolls out there, they're trying to get a comment in to look cool. It's a short shelf life. I mean, it really is. And the negative energy that some people spend by just trying to get their First Amendment, let me get my First Amendment in here. I mean, some of this stuff, you're wasting time. You could be out fishing, hunting, golfing, out on the lake, living right beer right now, or whatever it is. You're missing out on positive energy somewhere else. So if you truly care, the only way to separate propaganda and all this other crap is laws and orders. How are we a nation of laws and orders? If we're a nation of laws and orders, then you need to understand those laws and orders. And then you also need to understand why and how Donald Trump is your president, which he ain't. He's your commander-in-chief, right? You need to understand that. If you're going to go tell your neighbors, that's my commander-in-chief, you need to understand why. You don't need to be that thorn in the rear end that can't explain why. You need to be able to explain why. And that's how you empower yourself. That's also how you empower your friends and your neighbors and your family and your community, your cities, your towns, your counties. That's how you do that. So I hope this addresses Title 42. If you trust a man, trust a plan. That's God first. And then know that God put President Trump in his place. He put Commander-in-Chief Trump in his place. He put these military generals, men and women, all over the world, in this world operation in place. All right? On mine and your levels, which I'm still an average everyday American. I'm a podcaster now, I guess. I don't know, whatever. But on our levels, we don't need misinformation and disinformation. Anybody saying that is full of crap. All right? They got a bunch of floaters in their Wheaties. All right? Don't listen to them. Listen to what the laws and orders say. And these laws and orders enable you to take Donald Trump's speeches and hear everything he's saying in a whole different manner. So be careful who you follow. Be careful who you're listening to. If you want peace and comfort, first person who's going to give that to you is God above. And through him, all things are possible. So through him, he will give you peace. He'll give you strength. But you also have to practice patience, because a lot of you are learning what the military is about. Hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. Hurry up and wait. But they had to do this right. They had to get it right, and they had to do it right. And in order to get this completely cleaned out and to flip us back on our foundation, it was going to take time and a controlled operation. And like that pot again, like that frog in a pot that Lewis talks about, it had to be slowly turned backwards, and things had to be drip-dropping a different way from their level down to everybody. And people like me are taking what they're doing because I can code it, because I know the laws and orders in place like the back of my eyelids, and it's allowing you guys to slowly wake up, but trying to keep you from panicking, because there's nothing to panic about. There's nothing to fear, nothing to be afraid of. It's all laws and orders. It's current and active. Nothing to fear. All right, it's going to make everybody's lives better. Even President Trump says it. The haters and the trolls don't realize what we're doing. It's going to make everybody's lives better. All right, so God's going to reveal that. Only through God can we truly flip this whole thing over, and to flip it back to where you don't have all this confusion and chaos and division and all the hate and all it's what I call splitting of hairs. Every facet and every little group out there wants to split hairs on every little topic, every little subject. We can't have that. We got to get back to a foundation, a wholesome foundation that supports honesty, integrity, accountability, and responsibility. All right, the only way to do so is to trust this man first, because God put all these people in place, and then he put me in my position to do what I'm doing. And I'm only here because of him. So truly think about it. So all the trolls out there need to understand. You know, it's like, come on, man. Y'all got to understand. God put a country music singer here because I understand publicity. That's why I don't talk about people. That's why I don't play good cop, bad cop. Y'all need to stop doing that too. Stop worrying about who's good and who's bad. Learn the laws and orders first. Understand the precinct first before you try to be good cop, bad cop. You know, don't worry about that stuff. That stuff will be revealed. God's going to reveal it all. Everything in darkness will be brought to light. The Bible tells you that. So learn the laws and orders. Stop trying to play good cop, bad cop. Stop getting frustrated. Stop getting confused. The answers are right in front of you. And every single day, I will do my best to provide that for you. So, love you guys. Once again, thank you for being a part of the 1776 Nation Original. All right. We had to change the name briefly. That's being worked on. But unfortunately, we have a lot of copycatters out there who like the brown nose. They can't make a name on their own. So 1776 Nation Original is the only Facebook page. Then we have my Telegram. I only have one of those. All right, you might as well just put in www.me/rattletrap1776. All one word, no spaces, no underscores, no periods, no anything like that. Rattletrap1776. All right. Then we have True Social. I have at Derek Jonhson. It's the only thing I've ever got my name in or at Derek Jonhson on True Social. I have Twitter. It's Rattletrap1776, all one word, no spaces, no underscores, anything of that nature. Let's see, what else do I have? I do have an Instagram. It's at Derek Jonhson Country. My websites are thedocuments.info, the1776nation.com. And let's see, what else do I have? I always have to look. I have a TikTok. It's at Derek Jonhson Country. And let's see, what else do I have? I do have a Snapchat. All right, so I keep some of those private. But my one Snapchat that's public is X, the letter X, Derek Jonhson. I don't really check Snapchat, but if you just got to see me on Snapchat, then the letter X, Derek Jonhson, that is me. And then, yeah, I don't think I have anything else. That's it. So DerekJohnsonCountry.com. I forget about that. So if you want to support me, that's a good way to support me, is either buying merchandise. I do have the health products I think are very essential. And then also I do have I have the merchandise site and then my music page. So DerekJohnsonCountry.com. If you want to support me, it'd be great for you to stream my music. If you don't like country music, that's all right too. I mean, so it's a great way to support me if you'd like to support me in that way. I don't have subscriptions. I don't do the Trump TRB, whatever that stuff is. I get emails and messages all the time. I don't do that, so sorry. I feel bad for people out there that fell for stuff like that. There are a lot of brown-nosing, fake, fraudulent scam artists and accounts out there, just like the ones that are trying to copy the 1776 Nation original page. There's a lot of people out there that can't make a name on their own, and they use lies, frauds, scam tactics, things of that nature. It's unfortunate, but it's the world we live in, and it just shows you the world we live in. It shows you the level of hate. It shows you the level of ignorance. It shows you the level of confusion and division that these people want to create out there. And that's why you have to sharpen your skills, really, really sharpen your skills, and understand, you know, would Derek Jonhson write me a message? Would Derek Jonhson do this? No. Okay, you got to understand that. On my credible pages, I mean, you know, I do have a personal Facebook page that I had to open this account through. So people do message me on there. I try to message back. I try to get to every message on here. We do. It's very. We have an email account. If you want to email it, I forgot about that. My1776nation@gmail.com. If you want to email, but all hate mail gets trashed. All right, so all you trolls out there. But ladies and gentlemen, use discernment once again. You know, if President Trump has something out there, he'll let you know about it. All right. It ain't going to be a bunch of low-level people selling these things with his name on it. Think about that. If President Trump has something he wants to have, he'll issue it. He'll tell you about it. So you got to use discernment in a lot of different ways. So needed to address that, and we'll see you guys soon. Once again, nothing to fret. This has all been planned from the start. You cannot pick up from right now and believe everything that's going on, in the sense of you cannot know if you don't know what was put back here. That's why it's important that you can't be a dime store politician. You cannot be a dime store truth seeker. You can't be. You have to go back here. So it's nothing to fear. Nothing to fear. It's going to be beautiful. It really is. The ending's going to be. It may not be for everybody, but majority of people are going to be shocked at some of the good, but they're really going to be shocked for a lot of the bad out there. But hey, it's God. It's all God doing this, and I'm just proud to be one of His messengers. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. And I don't know when I'll go live again, but we'll go live again probably, you know, close to the date. We'll see what happens on May the 11th, and we'll see. You know, every day is one day at a time, and that's what I suggest everybody do. Take it one day at a time. Have some patience.
and enjoy this. Right, you're watching world history. If you're here